Let me ask you a question. If you were trapped in a dark cave, who would you want with you? Would you want the genius, the person who can calculate exactly how much oxygen you have left? The person who knows the scientific name of every rock and who can explain mathematically why there is a 99% chance you will never get out? Or would you want the person who, even in the pitch black, holds your hand and says, "I don't know how, but I know we are going to find the light"? We live in a world that worships intelligence. From the time we are children, we are graded on our IQ. We are told that being smart is the most important thing in life. We think that if we just analyze the problem enough, if we just have enough data, we will win. But what if I told you that intelligence has a limit? What if I told you that sometimes being too smart can actually be a curse? Today, I am going to tell you the story of two brothers. One was a genius, the other was a dreamer. And when the storm came, only one of them survived. Listen closely, because this story might just change the way you think about your own mind. In a small village nestled between two giant mountains, there lived two brothers named Julian and Leo. Julian was the older brother, and Julian was brilliant. He was the kind of man who could solve complex math problems in his head. He was an engineer, a realist, a man of logic. If you asked Julian a question, he would give you the facts. He saw the world exactly as it was. He saw the cracks in the pavement, the rust on the metal, the probability of failure. Then there was Leo. Leo wasn't a genius. He didn't read heavy books and he wasn't good at math. Leo was a carpenter. He worked with his hands. He smiled a lot. When Julian looked at a dead tree, he saw rotting wood. When Leo looked at a dead tree, he saw a future table, or a chair, or a sculpture. Leo didn't see the world as it was. He saw the world as it could be. Now, the village had a problem. For 100 years, the village had been separated from the main city by a massive, deep canyon. There used to be a bridge, but it collapsed decades ago. Because of this, the village was poor, the trade had stopped, the people were struggling. One day, the mayor made an announcement. "We have gathered enough stone and steel," the mayor said. "We need to rebuild the Great Bridge, but the canyon is windy and dangerous. Who will lead this project?" Everyone looked at Julian. He was the smartest man in town. He was the only choice. Julian took the job. He walked to the edge of the canyon. He took out his measuring tools. He checked the wind speed. He tested the soil. He worked for 3 days without sleeping, filling notebook after notebook with calculations. On the 4th day, Julian stood before the village. He looked sad. "It cannot be done," Julian said. "The gap is too wide. The wind is too strong. The soil on the other side is unstable. According to my calculations, there is a 90% chance the bridge will collapse during construction. It is too risky. We should not waste our resources." The village went silent. They trusted Julian. He was the genius. If he said it was impossible, it must be impossible. The people hung their heads. They accepted their fate. They accepted that they would always be poor. But then, a voice came from the back of the crowd. "I'll do it." It was Leo. Julian laughed, a dry, cynical laugh. "You, Leo? You can barely do long division. Do you know the physics of tension? Do you know about load-bearing structures?" "No," Leo said, stepping forward. "I don't know the math, but I know wood, I know stone, and I know that this village needs a bridge. If we don't try, we definitely fail. If we try, maybe we win." The mayor, desperate for hope, gave the job to Leo. Julian shook his head. "You are a fool, brother. You are letting your hope blind you to the reality. You will fail, and I will be here to say I told you so." The construction began. It was not easy. In fact, it was exactly as hard as Julian had predicted. The wind howled through the canyon like a beast. The dust blinded the workers. The heavy stones were slippery and hard to move. Every day, Julian came to the site. He didn't help. He just watched. He stood there with his notebook, pointing out the problems. "Look at that sway," Julian would shout. "The wind is 40 miles per hour. That rope is gonna snap in 2 hours." And you know what? Julian was usually right. The rope would snap. When it happened, Julian would nod. "See? Physics. You can't beat physics, Leo." The workers started to get scared. They listened to Julian. They thought, he is the smart one. He knows what is coming. Morale began to drop. Men started to quit. They said, "Julian says it's impossible. Why are we killing ourselves?" Leo was tired. His hands were bleeding. His back was screaming in pain. And honestly, he was scared too. He looked at the massive gap in the canyon, and he felt small. One evening, after a particularly bad day where a scaffold had collapsed, Leo sat by the fire. He had his head in his hands. Julian sat next to him. "Give up, Leo," Julian said softly. "It's not your fault. You're just not equipped for this. Intelligence is about seeing the danger before it hurts you. I'm trying to protect you. Stop now before someone gets hurt." Leo looked at his brother. He saw the logic in Julian's eyes. He saw the safety. But then, Leo looked at the village. He saw the children playing in the dirt, wearing torn clothes. He saw the old women counting their coins. "Julian," Leo said, "your intelligence tells you all the reasons why this will fail. My mind, it only tells me the one reason why it must work." "And what is that?" Julian asked. "Because we have no other choice," Leo smiled weakly. "You see the danger. I see the destination. You are analyzing the bridge. I am visualizing the crossing." Leo stood up. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he went back to the canyon. He didn't use math. He used his intuition. He thought, if the wind pushes this way, I will build a screen that way. If the rope snaps, I will double it. He turned his problems into challenges. When the workers came back the next morning, they saw Leo already working. He was singing. He wasn't singing because it was easy. He was singing to drown out the fear. His positivity wasn't blindness. It was fuel. It was the energy that made him lift one more stone when his muscles said stop. Months passed. Against all odds, the bridge was almost finished. They just needed to place the final planks in the center. But nature had one final test. On the last day, the sky turned black. A storm, bigger than anything they had ever seen, rolled over the mountains. Thunder shook the ground. The wind wasn't just blowing, it was screaming. The workers ran for cover. "It's going to break!" they yelled. "Run!" Julian stood on the edge of the cliff. He checked his anemometer, the wind speed tool. His face went pale. "Julian!" Leo screamed. "Get off the bridge! The wind shear is passing the structural limit. It is mathematically impossible for the wood to hold. It will snap in 30 seconds. Get off!" Julian was terrified. He loved his brother. And his brain, his brilliant high IQ brain, was calculating the death of his brother. Leo heard him. He was out in the middle of the bridge, holding onto a rope with one hand, battling the wind. The bridge was twisting. It was groaning. Leo looked at Julian. He saw the fear. He saw the logic. "He's right," Leo's brain whispered. "He's always right. It's going to break." For a second, Leo froze. He felt the vibration of the collapse starting. But then, Leo closed his eyes. He stopped thinking. He stopped analyzing. He switched off the logic and turned on the belief. No, Leo thought, not today. Instead of running back, Leo ran forward. "Throw me the anchor line!" Leo screamed to the few men left. "It won't hold!" Julian yelled. "It's physics!" "Throw it!" Leo roared. He caught the heavy line. He needed to tie the central support to the main rock on the other side to stabilize the sway. It was a crazy idea. It wasn't in the blueprints. Leo threw himself across the gap, sliding on the wet wood. He wrapped the rope. He pulled with everything he had. He screamed with the effort. The groan loudly. Crack! Julian covered his eyes. He couldn't watch. He knew what came next. But the crash never came. Leo held the rope. He braced his feet. He became part of the structure. He held on through the wind, through the rain, through the pain. He visualized the wood holding. He poured his will into the timber. For 1 hour, the storm battered them, and for 1 hour, Leo did not let go. Eventually, the wind died down. The clouds broke. The sun peeked through. The bridge was still standing. Leo collapsed on the other side, gasping for air, soaking wet, but alive. Julian slowly walked out onto the bridge. He tested the wood. He checked the ropes. He looked at the place where the structure should have failed. He walked over to his brother. Julian looked confused. "I don't understand," Julian whispered. "The math, the numbers, it should have broken. Why didn't it break?" Leo looked up, smiling through the mud on his face. "Because you were measuring the wood, brother," Leo said. "You didn't measure the will." Julian sat down. For the first time in his life, his intelligence had no answer. He realized that he had been a prisoner of his own mind. His intelligence showed him all the ways he could die, so he never really lived. Leo's positivity didn't change the wind, but it changed the outcome because it allowed him to act when logic told him to freeze. The bridge saved the village. They named it the Brothers' Crossing. But the biggest change wasn't the bridge, it was Julian. He threw away his notebook. He stopped saying it's impossible. He started working with Leo. Julian provided the plans, but Leo provided the heart. And together, they built things that defied gravity. My friends, we live in a society that tells us we need to be smart to succeed. We think we need to know all the answers before we start. But Julian taught us a hard lesson. Intelligence is a tool, but it is not a fuel. Intelligence is like a map. It can show you the road, it can show you the cliffs, it can show you the long way and the short way. But a map cannot move you. A map cannot make you take the first step. Only positive thinking, only belief can do that. There will be times in your life when the logic says you should give up. The facts will say you are not good enough. The statistics will say you will fail. If you only listen to your intelligence, you will stop. You will stay safe on the side of the cliff, watching your dreams die. But if you have a positive mind, if you can see the bridge when others see the abyss, then you become unstoppable. Don't just be smart, be brave, be hopeful. Because the world is built by dreamers who didn't know that it was impossible. A positive mindset is the only weapon you will ever need. If you have self-confidence, you can defeat any struggle. This is the story of the genius and the dreamer. Which one will you be today?